Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. Folks, this will be the final boarding call. So please, claim your seats, fasten your seat belts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist because there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, tonight's topic of discussion is going to focus around the future of foreign policy for the United States. As you are well aware, today was the start of the American-Israeli Public Action Committee, in which Donald Trump was slated to speak. We already heard Hillary Clinton speak. She was one of the first speakers this morning, and it really did bring up a point of contention that exists with the current state of foreign affairs within the United States. And it makes us wonder, what is the future of America's foreign policy? We ask this because it's been stated that this election cycle will be the one where we throw out any and all conventional wisdom. We see that AIPAC being held today, Hillary Clinton hit Donald Trump on some of the same issues that we did. This is what we were trying to warn you about, folks. Trump is not going to be able to withstand these attacks throughout the general election. He will be facing the boycott of his appearance at AIPAC by several prominent rabbis. I think this speaks volumes as to how the Jewish community sees the so-called Republican frontrunner. But where does that really leave us in the end, Jeremy? Are we just going to throw everything away for anger?
Well, it's a very concerning outlook on things. You know, the more I talk to individuals, the more I talk to people, it seems that they can't shake this, emotion that they have. We've been lied to this whole time. They said they were going to do this. They said they were going to do that. They've lied. Now, we have to point something out here regarding Ted Cruz and his, attachment that has been the label that's been placed on him because he's a senator and because he's a Republican. He's only been in office as a senator for 4 years. Mm-hmm. When he told his constituents when he was running for that office that he was going to go to Washington and basically, knock heads together, crack some skulls, and get things done, he hasn't skirted from that. He has done everything that he said he's going to do over 4 years. But this emotion, this, vitriolic rage doesn't allow anybody to see that. They don't want to say, you know what? Yeah, he's a politician, but he's not one of those politicians.
And like you said, they are unable to see the distinction. It's almost as though they don't wish to see the distinction. And I hate to say this, but when you listen to what Hillary was saying during the AIPAC speech, I don't like her, but she was coming across as a very well-structured speaker, someone who had a grasp of the situation, and someone who knew what to say. Of course, that's because she's a polished politician. She's had years to prepare for this. Like you said, she's very patient, and I think she's been coached on it, of course. But that's kind of the problem with Donald. If he really is going to, by some stretch of the imagination, secure the nomination for the gutless opposition party, or GOP, he is going to have to find a way to better present himself, to speak as you and I are able to speak into our microphones as we engage in these shows. It's not something where you can just be able to spew out anything and everything that comes to your mind in some fragmentary pattern. And, it speaks to his inabilities.
Well, sure. I mean, another example of his incoherent rambling that doesn't make any sense. He was asked a question by Chuck Todd regarding where does he get his foreign policy, strategies and this and that. He says he watches the shows. He watches Chuck Todd's show. He watches other shows, this, that, really, you formulate your foreign policy by watching shows because they have generals on them and this and that. Here's an idea. If you're going to do that, I don't know, why don't you go watch F Troop or something?
G.I. Joe.
Or MASH or any other military show, because you can't formulate your strategies and tactics on foreign policy without having an understanding of what is actually happening over there.
Right.
It's like I have a better foreign policy structure than the Clucking Don does.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just give a little bit of a piece of it regarding Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iran.
Right.
Everybody says, we need to pull out of Iran. We need to do this. No, can't do that. You can't pull out of Iraq. You can't pull out of Afghanistan. You have to pull out both. No, because if you do that, Iran will have everything free for the taking. You pull out of Iraq, Iran will go right into Iraq, and it will leave Afghanistan and all of our troops there hanging in the wind. Vice versa, if you pull out of Afghanistan, same effect if we leave everybody in Iraq. You have to leave them both there in both of those countries. Why? Because geographically it makes strategic sense. Iran is smack dab right in between Iraq and Afghanistan. That creates a stalemate. And the only way that stalemate's going to be broken is if Iran becomes absolutely bat guano crazy and just decides to say, we're just going to blah, 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 and hit the button. And that's it. And then at that point, it just creates a huge catastrophic mess for everybody. Kind of like, the Clucking Don running around setting all these brush fires. And then, if he gets the nomination and by some miracle grow for his hair, he wins the presidency, the whole country, the system is just going to be burned down.
And, he apparently had a meeting with some of the leaders of the party, and that apparently was to discuss what his plans were, what he would be doing, and how he would go forward. And he came out of this claiming that he had a clear path forward. Of course, none of the reporting seems to show any meat or potatoes to that. None of it seems to show that he is doing anything of specifics or particulars. And that's a problem. Because what do? What does it mean? How is he going to coalesce the party? How is he going to move the party forward? Because if you stop and think about it, that's the doubt that we all have, is we don't know what he's doing or how he will accomplish it. And he's certainly not made anything clear. And when you're going to be the leader of a party, and you're going to vie for the highest office in the land, you need to be particular and clear. And that's the major, major problem here, because he is showing that he doesn't grasp it. And I think that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are sitting on their hands with it too.
Well, they're sitting on something. And it may just be something that someone tells them that they're just going to have to rotate clockwise and counterclockwise. Whatever it is, it needs to be utilized in such a way. Let's look at it this way. Trump wants to talk about foreign policy. He has no clue about foreign policy. It's the same pattern with him. He says, I'm going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but there's no specifics. He can't tell anybody where he gets these ideas from. He won't divulge that. He won't tell anybody how he's going to do anything or accomplish what he says he's going to do. And people say, well, he's being smart. He's keeping it close to the chest, and he's not telling people because that gives them a way to undermine what he's going to do. No, absolutely not. He has ideas for solutions, but no plausible way of implementing them. And quite frankly, I don't think he even knows how to go about doing these things. He probably thinks it's like some little, peon board meeting that he walks into and says, well, this is my idea. I brought y'all here because I told you this was going to happen. And, well, I'm just going to, wing it, and we're just going to try this. Any suggestions? And then somebody offers up a wrong suggestion. No, he'll silence them. He'll fire them. If anything comes out against him that he doesn't like, he has the pattern and propensity to just, get rid of them. And at what point does that escalate to where if he becomes president and someone speaks out against him, he just has them put in prison or deported or tries to revoke their citizenship? Where does it end?
And that's the thing. We don't know where it ends with him, and we don't know what his policy scriptures would say or predict. And I think that works volumes against us, because when you stop and consider it goes to show that he really doesn't have the experience needed to mend the kind of relationships that are going to be necessary for foreign relations. I mean, just today he came out and said that he's going to charge Israel like he would any other nation for the defense spending that we have. Well, you know what? That goes against the Treaty of Alliance that we have with Israel. And it would go against all of the negotiating that we have done henceforth, hitherto. And what is that going to do? How are we going to maintain our relationship with Israel after we've already done so much to harm it with respect to the way that Barack Hussein Obama has been treating Israel over these last two disastrous terms? These are the sorts of questions that really need viable answers, and I'm just not getting any from Trump. But we know that they're saying he's got that clear and easy path to the 1237. Again, I don't see it. He's going to have to get what, 57%?
57, 58%, somewhere in that range.
Now, it's true that Cruz would have to get what, 80% to avoid it?
Yeah, but again, Cruz is the underdog. He's been the underdog this whole time, and he's shown nothing but perseverance and consistency. What has Trump shown? He started off strong, dropped down, and then came back up a little bit and leveled off.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm actually surprised he has maintained what he has. Well, I take that back. I'm not surprised, because it seems that the American people have been dumbed down enough to where this has been allowable for him to do this. He's the way he speaks. Again, he can't formulate a coherent sentence. He can't string two coherent thoughts together. He doesn't even have any coherent thoughts. and people are lapping it up like, a dehydrated dog. It's just, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Yeah. And So, looking back at AIPAC, we can see that the reason the rabbis were upset was because of things where he was stating that he would charge Israel for their defense, and that they didn't agree with his statement that he would be neutral with respect to negotiating Israel's fate with the Palestinian Authority. Folks, when you think about this, no nation should ever have to negotiate its right to exist when it has existed for as long as Israel has, with the support of the Western community. And again, it shows that his experience and the way that he would treat these foreign powers is just baffling to me. He hates NAFTA, the treaty that we have, the North Atlantic Treaty, but he loves the UN. Why? I guess the reason that he loves the UN is because he'd have people that work with the UN that live in some of his towers up there in New York.
Oh, he's probably had business dealings with some of the dignitaries. And I use that term loosely there, folks, in an Ann Coulter kind of way, loose. These foreign dignitaries. He's probably done business with them. And again, that points to the idea, and it solidifies it that much more, that Trump only cares about Trump. He only cares about himself. He's talked about building an empire. He considers his own, business dealings, his Trump organization, as an empire. Well, sorry, the United States is not an empire. We're not going to be treated as such. You're not going to take the helm and try to drive that train. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We are a constitutional representative republic. You work for us. And guess what, Trump? You screw up just this much. Just this much. Just a little bit. That just even smaller than one of your frothing follicles. You're fired. How's that?
Yeah. And it goes to show that we can't just select somebody based off of their celebrity. And that seems to be what our political system's been reduced to, particularly with respect to this 2016 election cycle. Everything is about these shallow, hollow, empty, and meaningless platitudes. And we've seen that play out. It's as though it is the Twitter campaign. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever seen Twitter play as central of a role in this type of election situation before, even though it's been around for what, 10 years now?
10 years.
10, 11 years, something like that. This takes it to a whole new level. And of course, they do say that technology has a disparate impact on politics, but has it been detrimental? I would say not necessarily. I would say that it depends on the way that the certain candidates are using it. Nobody's ever used it to just be an all-and-out vulgarian like Trump does. This is something new. He's like a shock jock, but for office. And do we really want to put America in that sort of a situation? Particularly when it deals with foreign policy situations, because he is going to be the representative for all Americans. Is he qualified for that?
Absolutely not. He's not qualified to represent me.
Right.
In fact, he's not qualified to spit shine my boots, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I would hire him, to try and do it, but again, I would fire him just on principle.
Yeah.
But even more so, you bring up him being a shock jock. I just have to make this point. I would actually hire Howard Stern to supervise him, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think Howard Stern shows more reserve.
Sure.
And, when we look at what the rabbis did, they were making a statement. And we have to remember that this happened these statements that he made about being neutral and whatnot, and then showing up at AIPAC. This all happens after there was that American who had served 2 tours of duty, one in Afghanistan, one in Iraq, a West Point graduate, that was brutally murdered by a Palestinian in, was it Tel Aviv, I think it was? One of the major cities in the Holy Land. And he's saying that he's going to be neutral, or that Israel is going to have to give up certain things on the bargaining table. I thought we didn't negotiate with terrorists except under Obama. But I mean, before that, I thought the entire principled stance of the United States was that we did not ever negotiate with terrorists. And this would explain why.
But in Trump's, stargazing coffee eyes, everything's negotiable.
Yeah,
everything's negotiable. So here it is. If this is not a red flag for everybody, the United States has long held a policy: we do not negotiate with terrorists. Trump says everything's negotiable. He wants, Israel to go to negotiation tables to negotiate peace or negotiate for their own defense. Really? You know what? I'll tell you what, Trump, why don't you make these asinine statements, and then at the end of them, end the press conference or the rally or whatever it is by telling everybody you're going out to go play golf on one of your golf courses.
Well, you know what makes it worse is the fact that the leading party within Palestine called these vicious murderers martyrs. They were celebrating them. And despite this, Trump is going to sit there and say that he is going to be neutral in his position and demand that Israel give up certain things, because that is the only way to obtain Middle Eastern peace. But haven't we tried this? Haven't we seen that talking doesn't work when these people are totally dedicated to the complete and total destruction of anyone who doesn't fall in line with their Islamo-fascist and medieval point of view? I mean, this is what it comes down to. These people cannot be reasoned with. They're not reasonable people. They don't want to be reasoned with. They don't believe in logic or reasoning. They believe in their twisted machinations, and that is just wreaking havoc and playing hell with the civilized world. This is the danger that ISIS represents. This is the danger that any and all of those vile and disgusting elements that are hell-bent on our destruction are all about. And make no mistake about it, they view us in the same light, with the same hatred that they view Israel.
Yeah. Excuse me. Again, him saying that Israel has to give up certain things in order to achieve peace. That's just the start of it, folks. That's just the start of it. If he's able to bully individual countries like Israel, sovereign states like Israel, all that's going to do is feed his ego. And his ego, in order for it to maintain itself, it's going to have to continue to be fed. And the only food that's going to be left at the buffet at that point is going to be our rights. Mm-hmm. It's going to come to the point where he's going to say, if you want to, be able to exercise the Second Amendment, you're going to have to give up your Fourth Amendment rights, which means you're going to have to turn over, medical documentation, this and that, much like what people are being forced to do under Obamacare.
Well, and let's take it a step further with the war that he's had on Apple, because that whole thing about the San Bernardino terrorists, where the federal government wants to just step in and force there to be a back door where the government can then collect any sort of data they want without having to go through the warrant requirement. That's something that Trump supports. That's something that violates not only economic privacy, but personal privacy as well, because he said that he would come down as hard as he could on the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook. And, I'm not a huge Tim Cook fan, but the type of threat that we saw there, is a very similar threat to what you'd see someone like a strongman like Mussolini make. It's something that Mussolini would double down on and say that, I am the state. The state is to be considered separate from the people. The people are only able to maintain certain individual freedoms, and we determine what those freedoms are and when they have them. That is the quintessential essence of fascism on a domestic policy level.
Sure. And, it's, again, I have to ask the question, where is it going to end? And that question applies to everything that Trump has opened his mouth about. Everything. He doesn't have any stable solutions whatsoever. He just has thoughts, that are leaching from his, his quaff. It's like, he's sweating these ideas and it's dripping down into his mouth, and he's just, saying it, spraying it everywhere, not caring what happens. He doesn't care. He's doing this to disrupt the country. He is doing this to disrupt the integrity of our electoral process and the integrity of our Constitution. And I say that, and I want people to understand that. When I say he's doing it to disrupt the integrity of our Constitution, it falls right back in with, at what point is it going to be to where his ego has gotten so big that it has to be fed by infringing upon and disparaging our rights?
I think it would get there very quickly. And, it's interesting because when Hillary was giving her speech at AIPAC very early this morning, one of the things she said is that nothing or not everything is negotiable. And I knew this would be a line that she'd use because it's a line we use. It's a line that anyone who's paying attention to what's happening in the nation and in the world would use. It just speaks to common sense that not everything is negotiable. Not everything is a business. That's why I say you can't run a nation completely like a business. Why? Because there are laws to take into consideration. There are individual rights to take into consideration. And if you run it like a business, yes, you have a tendency to fall into the trap of authoritarianism and totalitarianism. And of course, that is diametrically opposed to everything that we hold of value here in the United States. And to open ourselves to that sort of vulnerability just goes to show that we'd be willing to just about give up anything and everything. And if we did that, we would lose our identity as a nation and a sovereign people. And that's something we can ill afford to do.
Not only that, Randy, but it would mean that we have abandoned our principles. Now, with the United States being the structured republic, the beacon of freedom that we are, if other countries around the world see the United States abandon their principles, their fundamental tenets rooted in natural law and the Constitution, I want to know if people actually understand how demoralizing that is to the rest of the world.
Oh, it's very.
It will shake the rest of the world to its molten core.
Mm-hmm.
That is what scares me, Randy. And there really isn't anything in this world that scares me, except maybe that.
Hmm.
And it should scare the hell out of everybody with
Absolutely.
that concept.
Absolutely. And, though Hillary and I would disagree on just about everything, I think she was right here.
She was.
And here's where she'd also disagree with us, that our fundamental and unalienable rights are not up for negotiations. You see, that's where she and Trump would share something in common. They are both of the mindset that they're in it for themselves, they're in it for what they believe in, and that's all that matters. The rest of it becomes a penultimate concern as far as they are concerned, and that is dangerous. And folks, we bring this to your attention because it is so important and I believe imperative for us all to remember that the most important aspect of American citizenship and American hegemony is this doctrine that we are the popular sovereigns, meaning that we are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this great representative republic of ours. And that's also part of the danger of having it to where all of these revisionist historians, all of these Fabian socialists who have taken control of education, they have pushed it to such a limit now that they use the term democracy very loosely. You see, the way that our founding fathers intended for that to be used was only in relation to elections. Otherwise, we're a republic, because a democracy, a direct democracy, a true democracy or mobocracy recognizes only the rights of the majority, whereas a republic respects the rights of the sovereign individual. And that is something that our founding fathers stressed.
And that's one of the key tenets behind our Equal Protection Clause. It's one of the key tenets behind it, because respecting the rights of the individual, it allows us to make laws that holds that in check. You know, individuals, we all have equal rights under the law, equal protection under the law, meaning that we cannot be prosecuted for doing one thing that somebody else has done that was not prosecuted for. You know, there's a lot of inner working in there. And keeping this in spec with foreign policy, again, going back to what I said a couple moments ago, with this shaking the earth, every single country to its core. You want a strong foreign policy? The only way, let's start at the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
What good is foreign policy if you have every single country on this earth completely shaken to its core and abandoning their principles and not having that beacon on the hill of freedom to look forward to or to look to know that if some ruthless dictator invades their country, that if they are an ally of ours, we're there to have their back. At that point, if it comes to fruition like that, let's take Australia, for example. If it comes to fruition like that, Australia is a great ally of the United States. A great ally. What would stop North Korea from, launching a bunch of short-range, medium-range ballistic missiles with nukes on them to basically wipe out Australia? Nothing. Because the United States would not be there to stand with our allies and to hold North Korea in check. People always want to talk about, well, we don't want the United States to be the world's policeman. Neither do we. But we also don't want the world to go unpoliced. And when I say that, with the existence of the United States, it gives the morale for these other countries, these sovereign countries, to be able to control themselves and police themselves. If we don't exist, all of that goes away.
Right. And you have to stop and wonder, why is it that we enter into treaties? We enter into treaties because we get a mutually beneficial relationship there. There's intelligence aspects and considerations that go into it. Take, for instance, the relationship that we have with Israel. The Mossad is an incredible wealth of information.
Yes.
They provide us with some of the quintessential tools that are crucial and critical to fighting the war against these Islamo-fascists. They provide us insight into security measures that we hadn't considered before, because let's face it, folks, the Israelis have to live with this threat of terrorism and destruction, death, mayhem, and carnage at every given moment. They could be attacked at a drop of a hat. In fact, they are attacked at a drop of a hat. And therefore, to charge Israel for defenses, they could withdraw that information. You see, there are certain things that matter more than money, and I don't think that Donald Trump understands this.
Well, no, because if it impacts him directly, and if it's going to go against what he thinks is, his safety or his well-being or his pockets and coffers getting fattened, he's just going to shut people up. I mean, we've seen it. He at his rallies, we've seen him, have people thrown out into the cold without their coats.
Yeah, in fact, he said
they spoke up against him.
Yeah,
they spoke up against him. There was, I watched earlier. Trump was doing a press conference somewhere. I don't know, it was at a Trump Tower or something. And this African American,
that gaudy marble behind him, it was his tower.
Yeah. Well, it was one of his, places. And there was an individual that, he pointed to, and he began to ask this question. He goes, "Nope, that's enough. Next." And I'm thinking, really?
You also have to keep in mind that he's kicked press people out like Politico,
or
he keeps the press
corral them like cattle.
Yeah,
I mean, what an arrogant, insignificant narcissist. I mean, come on.
We deserve better than this, and that's why I think
better than this.
Of course we do, and I think that's why the rabbis who were boycotting his speech at AIPAC were right to do so.
Absolutely.
We cannot allow this sort of madness to consume our nation. That's what our founding fathers would expect us to do, is to not tolerate this, to stand up to Trump and say, you know what you're doing here is totally unacceptable. We will not tolerate it. And it shows time and again that we have to look to our history to understand this, to see where we're coming from and what we have to do to ensure that we continue down the path to prosperity. You see, Trump is disrupting any chance we have of fully getting to the place where the people are allowed to be freed to then pursue the steps that are necessary to return to prosperity. You see, folks, we cannot turn to a politician or a businessman or a singular individual to save us. It's up to we the people. That's the way our founding fathers designed our system of government, and they did so on purpose. Because if you have somebody or an individual who's strong enough to supposedly save the country, then you have somebody who is strong enough to be a dictator, to rule as a potentate and a despot.
Yeah, and you know what it is. I think I just figured it out, Randy. Trump is building a monopoly. He is monopolizing all of this. It's exactly what he's doing. He silences people that disagree with him. He kicks them out of their rallies, press conferences, whatever, and then he'll take to Twitter to shame them and insult them and berate them. And he does it because, well, people say, well, that's just him being a brash businessman. No, that's him being an incompetent moron. Because when he does that, people find out about it. And when people find out about it, certain individuals that find out about it, like us, we bring it right to the forefront.
Of course.
And he thinks he's riding smooth on his little rail, this train, choo, 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 choo. Guess what? It's about to take a derailment. Because everything you do from here on out Everything you've done in the past and everything you do from here on out is going to be one more penny on the tracks that's going to cause your derailment, because we're going to expose it. We're going to hold you accountable for it, because you think you're above the law. You think you can't be held accountable. Wrong. You had just met. You think you are the unstoppable object. You had just met the immovable force.
Yeah. Yeah. And you stop and think about what it is when you look at Cruz and the way that he approaches this, as opposed to Trump, who is all about me, I have all the solutions. Don't ever question me. It's always me. Cruz actually says we the people. He goes to the people. He says that it is up to the people to save the country. And the price that we pay for that is, yes, it's more difficult. Yes, it means we have to be proactive. But in a way, isn't it so refreshing to finally hear that, hey, we as sovereign citizens are really not helpless? We as sovereign citizens have all the tools at our disposal that are necessary, that are a prerequisite to saving this country. And I don't think I'd want anyone else other than we, the people, to save our country.
You know, this country was built on challenges. And the bigger the challenge, the more we persevere through it, the better the outcome. That's what it is. And if people want to look at it as a challenge to where it falls squarely on the shoulders of we the people to maintain and preserve the sovereignty of the United States, our fundamental, unalienable, God-given rights, and our Constitution rooted in natural law, then guess what? I accept the challenge. I'm not going to back down from it. My principles will not allow me to back down from that challenge. Mm-hmm. As your principles to all of our listeners currently listening in right now, and those of you who will listen or join us later after this live broadcast, your principles will not allow you to back down from that challenge. This is us empowering you. But we really don't have to do that because you've already been empowered. All we're doing is showing you how you've been empowered. All of us were empowered over 230 years ago when our shared Constitution was written into existence.
And you know what was so revolutionary about what our founding fathers did? It was the way in which they defined sovereignty. You know, before the United States came into existence, what did you call the leader of a country? It was your sovereign king and lord. Mm-hmm. Sovereignty was either in the aristocracy or in the king, like in absolutist France under Louis XIV, XV, and XVI. It was directly from the king. The king was the state was the king. Everything focused on the king. In England, we had gone through a bit of a natural law evolution, going back to the 1200s with the Magna Carta. To the point of the American Revolution, it was sovereignty being in the king, but with the permission of Parliament. Mm-hmm. Well, our founding fathers took it that next step further. No, sovereignty rests squarely in the hands of we the people. And that is why you see that the opening lines to the preamble to our shared Constitution is we the people. It speaks directly as to whom the authority is coming from and to where it is being applied.
And who it is being delegated to.
Right.
As per Article 1, Section 8. And who it is prohibited from having it, or what authorities are prohibited under Article 1, Section 9. And then, of course, at the state level, Article 1, Section 10.
Right.
Which
and then, of course,
the 10th Amendment.
The Bill of Rights.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which, and a lot of folks, want to say, well, the Bill of Rights, they yeah, they're part of the Constitution, but they're kind of separate. No, absolutely not. Because we have two preambles in the Constitution. We have the preamble of the Constitution, then we have the preamble to the Bill of Rights, which states that any and all articles or amendments ratified to the Constitution from that point on carry the full force, weight, and effect of the Constitution as being the supreme law of the land.
Yes. Yes, because they're clauses. It's basic contract law. And that's why we say that the Constitution is the greatest social compact or contract that has ever been drafted by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by Providence itself. And it goes once again to show how we have relationships with different countries. Because if you look at the treaty aspect that Article 6, Clause 2 speaks to, it shows that for any of these relationships to exist and to function properly, at least under the legal aspect, it has to be within the limits and the scope and application of the Constitution. That's why they list in that article and clause the Constitution first, because this hierarchical scheme sets up the dominant relationships.
And all treaties and laws have to be made in pursuance of the Constitution. And people don't understand truly what that word means, pursuance.
Mm-hmm.
It's derivative pursue. Well, pursue means to follow. Pursuance is the act of following. Therefore, all treaties that are made must invoke the act of following the Constitution. They cannot exist if they infringe upon the Constitution, any part of it, whether it's our shared rights, whether it's even Article 3 of the Constitution, even if it's Article 5 of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. If it's not done in pursuance, it's void ab initio, period.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's so laughable is that we have Trump coming out and proclaiming to the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media that he's bringing in all these new Republicans, that he is uniting the party, when nothing could be further from the truth. He has driven a wedge between the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. He has pitted American against American, and we are now more divided than we have been since 1860. Folks, that's right before the Civil War. We have not been as divided as we are today since then. And he's made it worse because he's fractured it within the microcosm of this particular political party. Now, the Republican Party has a lot to go on for the blame here. They have a lot to assume with respect to the blame because of the way that the detente wing, or the establishment wing of the party, has acted and reacted. The way that they've ignored the people has spurred on this sort of anger that we've been seeing on the part of the base, and that may and absolutely has, in some cases, led to the type of blind rage that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of our listeners, Randy, we'll just say Miss R, right now. She asked the question. I'm conversing with her on Facebook right now as well. She asked the question. She says, "We the people, what happened to that?" Well, that is why we do what we do, Miss R. This is why we have this show. We do this for we the people. We do this because it needs to be done. Is it a challenge?
Of course.
Of course it is. If you haven't noticed, this really isn't my normal voice. I'm struggling still with some damage to my vocal cords from being sick and whatnot. But it's a small price to pay for the preservation and the restoration of what this country was built upon. We do this for you. We do this for we the people. And if it wasn't for we the people, we wouldn't be able to do this at all.
And you know what? Anar makes another good point here. New Republicans equal Democrats in disguise. Well, yes,
Hmm.
that's the thing. When you look at where Trump is doing well in the primaries, it's always the open primaries. And we've seen the Democrats on any type of social media come out and say that the express purpose and reason for them going over and voting for Trump in the Republican Party is because they perceive him to be the weakest candidate, the one that Hillary can most easily beat. And that is the goal they're attempting to achieve. And you can see that that really hurts the party. It hurts the party because it gives him this facade of credibility when in fact he has none. And it works against our ability to be able to effectively run against whichever candidate they wind up choosing. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, but I think that the most recent polling has showed that Trump would lose to both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders by
Yes.
a substantial margin.
Double digits, if not double digits, very high single digits. So, it's, again, he puts on, like you said, this facade, this, faux shell of what people want to see. But he's up there telling people what they want to hear. He's not telling people what they need to hear. I made this statement a few years back after Obama was reelected to his second term. I said, in the next election, we need somebody. And it's almost like I kind of cursed us. And, if people want to take it that way, that's fine. I'm making amends for it now. But I've told people we need someone who's going to stand up there, not pull any punches, screw political correctness, tell it like it is, but tell people what they need to hear. And I think that's the salvation of that statement for me, is because Trump is not telling people what they need to hear. He's telling them what they want to hear. He himself started this whole thing of labeling the politicians as being the ones that created this mess. He came right out of the gates firing at the GOP establishment. I'm not defending the establishment in any way, shape, or form. I'm not. Because they did lie to us. Many of them ran campaigns to get elected by telling people what they wanted to hear. And then they did the complete opposite. I don't view Trump as any different than the establishment. In fact, I believe he is the head of the establishment. Okay?
And you know what I hate to say, but it needs to be said, is that when you look at Donald Trump in the light of being this sort of reaction to what Obama has done in wanting to fundamentally transform the country, making people get up in each other's faces, if you recall him saying that, he shows that Obama has achieved his goal, that there is no doubt that anyone can have that he has achieved the goal of divide and conquer. Donald Trump is a result of that. And it is this ugly reaction that is frightening. And there are certain aspects of what Donald may say which may sound good, as Jeremy was saying, which may make logical sense, but the ham-handed way that he's been going about handling it, and the way, like, he allows his campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, to just get away with things like manhandling yet another individual at another rally, that does not reflect our American values.
No.
We should be able to voice disagreements. We should be able to do so via civil discourse. But Donald Trump has essentially hammered another nail into the coffin of civil discourse as we become more venomous and divided than we've been in 150 years.
Again, I want to go back to this point of he's following this facade. He's put this on. He's wrapped it up in makeup, maybe a couple of times wrapped in the Sarah Palin's fishing lure shirt. It's just he is telling people what they want to hear. He is feeding off of their emotions.
You betcha, you hoser.
He created the emotion so that he can use the emotion. Now, folks, if that is not the essence of propaganda, I don't know what is.
I don't know what essence of propaganda. It is.
You create the situation, you create the crisis, you create the emotion, and then you milk it for all that it's worth so that you can perpetuate and achieve your agenda.
Yeah. And it goes to show that when you are blinded by emotion, when you act on unfettered passion, you run the risk of being manipulated. That is what Donald Trump is banking on. He is banking on the fact that he will be able to manipulate you because he's able to whip you up into such a frenzy that you basically turn your mental faculties, your cognitive abilities off and allow him to sway you. This is what dictators love to do. And this is why, more so than any type of political structure or economic framework he works from, we claim that he has an affinity for fascism. It's more of the political kabuki theater of fascism that he espouses, that he lends himself to, because he sees that as something that is particularly beneficial and useful for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then utilizing that emotion, feeding off of it, it's caused people to behave in such a way that individuals did during the 2008 election, during the 2012 election. But see, the candidates then, the Republican nominees and frontrunners then, John McCain and Mitt Romney, they're not the ones who did that. No, it was Ron Paul. Ron Paul's the one who utilized that kind of propaganda in order to create this sensation, this movement of saying, well, if you vote third party, you don't vote for McCain or you don't vote for Romney, then it's an automatic vote for Obama. No. Now those same individuals that railed against that didn't want to vote for Romney because they saw him for the milquetoast candidate that he was, are now jumping on board with Trump, and they're doing the exact same thing that they despised 4 years ago.
Yeah. It's
how
almost
very hypocritical of you.
Yeah, I was about to say it's almost the quintessential definition of hypocrisy.
Yes.
Right. And when we see this division, we see that it means that America is in a precarious position with respect to any Trump versus Hillary type of face-off. And then you see somebody like John Kasich. The problem with John Kasich is that he's John Kasich. I don't even know why he's standing at the podium tonight. He's a moron. That's all there is to say about him. He's wasted space, and no one should give any support to him whatsoever, because he is just playing the role of basically your little troll. He's being a troll. He looks like a troll.
What he is, he's the proverbial skirt that Trump's hiding behind. That's what he is. He is Trump's bullet stopper, pretty much. It's his shield.
Yeah.
Because if Kasich wasn't in the race, Trump would have no choice but to stand toe to toe against Ted Cruz. And I guarantee you he will crumble and fold like his suits that are made in Mexico
Or China.
or China.
And, you know, Trump is going to have a lot of trouble overcoming the obstacles that are in his path if he wishes to secure the support of the Israeli supporters. Of course, that would disappoint a rather large portion of his voting base.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you all recall that little orphan Annie Yep Yep Coulter Toto came out months ago and referred to the Jewish population with the typical anti-Semitic slogan that one would expect from someone who is hoping to relive the halcyon days of Nazi Germany. She basically referred to them as F double priming Jews. Why? Why is that necessary? What does that accomplish? What does that reflect upon other than her lack of character as a human being, if we can even refer to her as a human being?
Well, guess what, little orphan Annie Yap Yap? You're done.
Yeah.
You are done.
Yeah.
See, you make these, statements on Twitter and in other forms of media, and then you don't want to answer up for them when people call you to the carpet on it. You just want to ignore them, much like you've ignored us. We have directly tweeted to you, and you have ignored every single thing. In fact, I'm willing to bet you've probably blocked us. Now, I know you're not listening to the show. I know you've never listened to the show, but you know what? Other people have. And our listeners, our first-class passengers, as we like to refer to them as, guess what? They're going to take this and they're going to run with it. They're going to come after you with it. They're going to hold you accountable because their principles dictate that they must. You might as well hang it up, go write your little memoirs, do whatever, and find some villa in Austria to go hang out in, Ava.
Yeah. And, the other person that is a Trump supporter, although unofficially speaking, is David Duke. All of this type of divisiveness, the incitement of violence that we've seen time and again with respect to the Trump camp and his rallies, that ties into the message that he has. And, of course, he's not the current head of the Klan, even though the current head of the Klan spokesperson is supporting Trump. He is this big powerhouse within the white supremacist movement. I'm sure you've all heard of Stormfront, the white supremacist website. Guess who is a co-founder of that? David Duke.
Yep. Now, I have an idea. Too bad this wasn't a match game, like a dating game for us, Randy, because I think we have a match made in hell.
Hello, my honey. Hello, my darling, right?
Yeah. Little Orphan Annie Yap Yap and David Duke. Now, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if, it would happen. I wouldn't be a bit surprised at all. I mean, let's look at, her past affiliations and bows. Bill Maher, a self-loathing Jew, says that he despises Judaism. And turned out to be an atheist. This and that. Yeah, in just a small tidbit of defense of little orphan Annie Yap Yap, maybe she was, hornswoggled by Bill Maher into, hating Jews. I love the Jews. No, you don't. Yeah. No, you don't. Nobody can righteously claim that they actually have an affiliation or an affinity for a group of individuals, a culture, and then call them, Farouking Jews. Sorry.
Yeah.
It just can't happen. It would be like Hitler doing it.
Yeah.
Ava Braun, Little Orphan Annie, Yap Yap Ava Braun, Toto. Her name just gets longer and longer every episode, Randy. I swear.
It does. It
We're
does.
We're gonna have to have an acronym for it.
Barf. We'll find a way to make barf work. But we all know that these white supremacist communities will have no love for the Jewish community, and maybe that is part of the reason why Trump is taking such a hardline stance with the way that he would deal with foreign relations with respect to Israel, is to not lose their support, because I see that he's trying to use them perhaps as his strongmen, his muscle, his brown shirts, for lack of a better term. And it really is creating this ugly atmosphere that should not be a part of American politics. And it goes down this line of the way that the salivating mainstream media keeps referring to him as this untraditional candidate. Well, yeah, he's untraditional in so much as he's embracing the sorts of tactics that thugs use. And it's threatening the vitality of the United States, the future of the United States, and we can't have it. We just can't have it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's our conscience, our principles, our moral compass, and ethical barometer do not allow this. Mm-hmm. They do not allow this. And if we cast aside our principles, our moral compass, our ethical barometer, and we negate our conscience, at that point, what have we become? We've become no better than them, those that want to destroy our constitutional representative republic, those that want to tear to shreds our shared constitution, those that would not bat an eyelash at depriving us or infringing upon our rights. We become no better than them. In fact, we become worse than them. Because at that point, when we become worse than them, at that point, all is lost.
And that's why we have to face the problems and wake up to the realities that face our party. It is not conservative to support someone who advocates violence, lies about the application of the First Amendment, and viciously attacks his opponents within his own party more so than he attacks the opposition. I have been told that I'm not a conservative for refusing to support Trump. Well, you know what? That's fine. I don't accept the labeling that they're trying to force on me. If Donald Trump fits into their definition of conservative, then I'll accept the title of constitutionalist alone. Folks, this is why we say that we're the new resistance. We know that the factors that are now starting to coalesce behind Trump are going to up their rhetoric against us. And that is something we must be prepared for. And I think that we are prepared for it. We are prepared to say, this is our country. You can't have it.
And it's like I said a few episodes back, in quoting Thomas Jefferson regarding the Tree of Liberty being watered with the bloods of patriots and tyrants alike. Folks, I've got my watering can in hand, and I have no intention of setting it down. It's heavy, it's daunting, and it's a lot of weight to carry, but I do it because it is a small price to pay for the preservation of our liberties, freedoms, and our republic.
Yeah. And it's what our founding fathers would expect us to do.
It's what our founding fathers would have done 10 times over by now.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, I'm embarrassed and ashamed.
Yeah.
As we all should be in their eyes.
And, the troubling thing about it is, those that are terrified that Trump is going to, be somebody that we have to follow, they're starting to see those of us who actually support the Constitution in the same light as the insane left-wing Fabian socialists who are hell-bent on utterly destroying our country see us. That is troubling. And thus we must be prepared to combat them at every turn. Because if they had their way, they'd force us to march in lockstep with whatever the party has decreed. And we've seen this time and again. We saw it in 2008. If you don't coalesce behind McCain, you're not a conservative. If you don't support Mitt Romney, you're not a conservative. This is the type of groupthink that really should have no place in conservatism, because conservatism is all about adhering to the Constitution, protecting the right of the sovereign individual, and that means the ability for the sovereign to think and act for him or herself.
Yeah. It's somewhat deeper than that. It's the notion of people not only thinking and acting for themselves, but accepting their responsibility for their actions.
Well, I kind of lump that in.
Yeah, but it's also being able to understand that it's our obligation to hold each other accountable.
Of course. But also our duty to defend each other's rights.
Absolutely. It works hand in hand. It's the yin and the yang, so to speak. But we can't have what you can't have one facet of that without the understanding of the other, and vice versa. You have to understand that whole concept as a whole before you can actually do anything.
And so what it really requires is for us to realize that this is the time to start calling those elements onto the carpet for their bluff. We have to call their bluff. They either support the free will of the popular sovereign or they don't. You can't have it both ways. Right. And they are the ones that brought this battle to the forefront. We did not choose to create this conflict. We are merely standing for our principles as we always have. And you notice they start to now say that that is an extremist position to hold. That is out of step with reality. That's just unreasonable. Why is it unreasonable to stand up for the values that made us great, for those aspects of our character, heritage, spirit, and identity that in our relatively brief yet illustrious history buoyed us to the heights that we achieved, that no one dreamed possible? Because you remember, on the day that Yorktown fell, King George wrote in his diary that nothing special happened on this day. He was wrong.
And I'm gonna take it a step further, Randy. Here's my response to those individuals that say it's unreasonable, it's not reasonable, it's not reality, it's not realistic. It absolutely is. It is the reason and the rationale, and it is the reality that has been forgotten in this country. It is the reality and the rationale that formed this country. That's
part of our DNA.
That reason and rationale has been abandoned by we the people. It's time that we find it again, embrace it, and use it. And if those individuals don't want to toe the line, if they don't want to adhere to the will of we the people, they need to get out of the way.
And this sort of disagreement is what is threatening to destroy the conservative movement from within. Remember that we defined conservatism on last night's program. We did so because we are hearing a lot of loose uses of the phrase designed to disparage a certain group of us, indeed the vast majority of us, who simply want nothing to do with a con artist like Donald Trump. And when you stop and consider it, what is it that Donald Trump does that promotes conservatism? What is it that he does that promotes the preservation of the Constitution and our traditional values and institutions? Not much of anything. Not much of anything. That's the problem. He is the P.T. Barnum of our era. He is a carnival barker. And that's not an ad hominem attack. That is a description of him. We're dealing with just the facts here, folks. And this is what we see. We see that he is able to just bark out platitudes, and that woos a crowd, and it causes them to emote rather than to proceed with logic. That is a danger. And it's something we must address, because if we fail to address it, this problem is only going to fester like an open wound and come back to haunt us.
Well, not only come back to haunt us, but come back to destroy us.
Oh, sure.
And, I'm not ready to go yet. That's just, that's just me. But, that's kind of out of my hands. It's
Right.
not up to me when it's my time to go. But before it is my time to go, I'm going to do everything I can with every fiber and being within myself, including my last breath, to make sure that either our republic is preserved, or B, measures are in place to ensure that preservation. This goes right to the oath and the promise and the pledge that we made the other night, Randy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to live that down. I will not fall back on that. I have given my word. I was raised to live by my word. I will not falter on that. I will not deviate from that. I don't care there's nothing on this earth that anybody can do to me that will make me go back on my word.
Mm-hmm. And, this sort of infighting also means that when it comes to foreign policy, that we're starting to see a huge disparity in the differing views that we hold for the world. Donald Trump has come out and complained about the prominent role of America in NATO. He thinks that other nations should pay for our position in that organization. The problem with that assertion is that we were the primary treaty signer. We took a leading role, because that's what America is supposed to do. Think of it as giving our word as a nation. I see no problem in maintaining this role. Yes, we have a financial crisis, but if we return to the Constitution, that wouldn't be a problem, because we would see the restoration of our financial largesse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not the way people are thinking about it.
Well, and again, it's the simple concept of adhering to the Constitution. We look at all of these other issues just simply go away. The economy will thrive and flourish. The unemployment issue, that will become all but non-existent. You're never going to have true zero unemployment. It's never going to happen. But that, the economy, the housing issue, a plethora of other issues, small and insignificant, but large or bigly in their own right, will all but cease to exist because of the framework of the Constitution. And see, this is what Ted Cruz is talking about. He talks about getting us back to the constitutional principles, which is the founding fathers laid forth out for this country.
Mm-hmm.
It worked so well for so long,
right?
And then, it was diminished over time, and through the diminishment or the diminishing of it, that's when people have abandoned their principles and values.
Yeah. And, we need to get back to sanity in this country. That's part of the problem. We see that Trump is throwing fuel on the fire, making matters worse with the strained relations that we've had with allies as a direct result of this Barack Hussein Obama regime and its disastrous 2 terms. And I don't see Trump's solutions as solving anything. In fact, I see it prolonging and worsening the problems, as if it would drive a further wedge between our allies and ourselves. Cruz has shown, on the other hand, that he is committed to the process that has served this nation for so long. We are a nation of laws for a reason, and our supreme law is the United States Constitution. Folks, this really isn't a difficult position to take. Sadly, many have closed their eyes and ears to reality. They either hate Cruz as they suffer from Cruz derangement syndrome, or they want to completely discount Cruz and argue that Trump has already completely won this thing. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. Trump hasn't won a majority yet. People are acting like a contested convention now is somehow stealing the election from Trump. 1327 is not some arbitrary number. It's 50% plus one. That's by a preponderance of the vote, meaning more than half. This is how the rules have been set up for primaries for a very long time. Trump and his supporters are the only ones who seem to have a problem with it.
Well, sure. And, like you said, nothing is over yet. The main reason why nothing is over yet, because we the people haven't said so. It's not over until we the people say it's over. Period. If people want to be angry, they want to have this emotion of anger. Well, let's have righteous and indignation anger. Let's first place it where it needs to be placed. First of all, we the people. Nothing happens without our say-so. That's the way it was set up with the founding fathers. That's the way it was utilized until the Fabians and the socialists, the fascists, all of the ill-gotten leftist demagogues and spawns of Satan sunk their teeth and claws into us.
Yeah. And, if all of this other stuff that we have mentioned isn't bad enough, we also have the Imperial Majesty himself traveling to a land more friendly to his policy views, Cuba. Obama, Cuba Libre. Yeah, Obama has thumbed his nose at the conservative figures who have recently passed away. He claims to not have time to attend their funerals. I'm speaking of the late Associate Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia and former First Lady Nancy Reagan. And of course, he's done this before. Margaret Thatcher, various other conservative. Yeah. And he claims he doesn't have time because he's so busy playing another round of golf that he needs to make these important state official visits to Cuba, apparently. Folks, this is just demeaning. There is no other way to describe it. I can't think of any, at least.
Well, wait a second. Wasn't Cuba, I understand what, with the Bay of Pigs and all that stuff, what it led to, the embargo on Cuba, and, they're a communist country run by communists. The leader of the free world, or as some would view it, the not so free world anymore, is gallivanting with communists. Why? Why are we allowing this? Oh, isn't it the reason why he's able to do this because he lifted some sanctions regarding Cuba and various other things, the travel restrictions into the country and from the country, so on and so forth. Didn't he just do that not so long ago? Yeah.
Through executive order.
Through executive order. So let's see. He got rid of those sanctions and lifted all that stuff. And now he goes and is sipping mojitos with Raul Castro.
His commie brothers from another mother.
Yeah.
Folks, this is why we say that we need to ask about what is the future of America's foreign policies, because we see that Obama has turned directly against the will of the American people. He has acted against our traditional allies. He's driven a wedge between our traditional allies, and he is empowering our traditional foes. Look at the way he is empowering Iran with this nuclear deal, and the way that he has been lackluster with North Korea, and the TPP, that whole Trans-Pacific Partnership trade plan, that's designed to help China, even though they say that it won't. No, China will work their way in. In fact, there's already been talks about that, even though this thing hadn't passed. We have to consider America's interest first. That's something that we haven't seen in a long time. It's something that our leadership has been feckless and spineless about. It's time to consider America first. And I'm sorry, I don't think Donald Trump, the clucking Don, is going to do that.
Well, he's not going to do it for the benefit of we the people.
No,
for the
just for
benefit of the
himself.
country. He's going to do it for himself. He's going to set this all up, and this is his grand plan. And of course, he won't come on here to discuss this with us. We've offered him and extended many invitations for him to do so, but he won't come on here. Which is kind of surprising because he loves the media. It doesn't cost him anything to use the media to advance his agenda. So why not come on our show? Why not come on the Wright Flyer? We'll give you a round trip ticket. How's that? You come on the show, we'll do a 15-minute spot with you. And we'll give you 14 minutes to make your case, because it's only going to take us 1 minute to destroy everything you have to say.
Yeah. And folks, as we said, we do this for you. We stand up for you. We represent you. We want to empower you. And we don't expect you to take everything that we're saying here at face value. In fact, that's the last thing we expect. We expect you to take this information, check it out, see if it's accurate, and follow through with your own empowerment, with your own expansion of knowledge, because in so doing, that is what helps bring this nation back together and makes this nation stronger. And that's something you're never going to hear from Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media.
And something else you're never going to hear from them either. If we're wrong on anything we say,
we apologize and correct.
Hold us accountable to it. Hold us to it.
Yeah.
We want you to hold us accountable, because that is the only way that we can righteously hold others accountable. We are willing to be held accountable for our mistakes and for our bad information or misinformation. If we don't catch it ourselves first, bring it to our attention. You can bring it to our attention on Facebook, in the comments section, on our YouTube page here, on Twitter, whatever means necessary. And for those of you who know us a little bit more personally and have the ability to contact us by telephone, give us a call.
And with that said, folks, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. We'd like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We look forward to seeing you again next time. We invite you to leave your questions, comments, or concerns either here on our YouTube page, our Google Plus page, or our Facebook page. And we also invite you to follow us on Twitter with the hashtag @RadioAviationX. Folks, that's all one word, @RadioAviationEX, @RadioAviationEX. And there you'll find our departure board, which has all of our goodies, which includes the Cafe Press account that we have. Go ahead and take a look at some of those things, see if you find something you like, and give us a little bit of support here. As we said, we're doing this for you, and we want to be able to continue doing it for you. Thank you again, folks. See you next time. Do take care.